All right, Aaron. So we've been talking a lot about different kinds of tools and ways of looking that you can explore in creating images and texts in aesthetic contexts. And some of those tools that we've focused on involve transforming looking at into ways of looking at, seeing as and representing as well as tonal variations in the way that a message is constructed, such as irony, but there are, of course, other tools that can be used in relationship to messages and content, and ways of framing representation. And I want to talk a little bit about context today and communication, and then we'll do an art proposal. But the context first will involve what I would call immediate context, and then we'll talk about historical context. All right, so what we're looking at is Jefferson Airplane, and she's singing Someone to Love. And this particular rendition of that song, which was a hit on the charts, is being performed at Woodstock. And the date is the day after my birthday, 69. So I had just turned 5 years old when this concert was going on. And the reason that I'm beginning here is, as you're aware, some intelligent entity via the Brooklyn Rail sent me a message, a numerical message, that if uncoded represents this song, Someone to Love. Now, we'll begin talking about context. So I thought about what this song might mean in relationship to some of the work that we've been doing recently, Aaron. And it occurred to me that if you take the initial letters of this song, Someone to Love, you have STL. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because STL can represent St. Louis. And we have been talking about an arch. And we talked about that arch in relationship to a kind of parable that in a text by Italo Calvino called Invisible Cities, he has Marco Polo narrate a description of stones that form an arch, and he narrates this to his patron Kubla Khan. And Kubla Khan wants to discuss the arch, not the stones, and he asks the questions. And of course Marco Polo responds, well, without the stones, the arch couldn't exist. And so the parable involves a desire to universalize, right? And to ignore the details of the particular. And what we're working on are ways of rethinking that idea and questioning the assumptions behind it. So when I decoded this message, Someone to Love, in relationship to the context of the work that we're doing, right? And this is how important context is in understanding messages. I thought about this arch that exists in St. Louis. Now, the thing about this arch, Aaron, is that it not only refers to the immediate context of the arch that we were considering when we looked at Italo Calvino and Kubla Khan's desire to understand this abstract arch, right? That Marco Polo reminds him, well, couldn't exist without the stones. The thing about this arch is that it's also contextualized, but it's contextualized in history. And what this arch is a memorial. And what it's a memorial to is the Western expansion of the United States. And it universalizes that Western expansion as an ideal and presents it as a universal principle of the development and growth and unproblematic destiny of the American peoples. When in fact, what we know to be the case is that this Western expansion often involved the stealing of Native American land, the crippling of Native American economy, such as the economies of the plains tribes and cultures that depended for their lives on buffalo and other animals and other aspects of the natural landscape, that were basically eliminated in the course of this industrial, future industrialization of the landscape and territorializing of the expanse, right? So the railroads contributed to this, and in that way, St. Louis, was a big part of the contribution to the extermination of cultures and peoples, and then when those cultures and peoples survived, their lives were, changed dramatically and irrevocably, so that the representation of this arch as a kind of gateway, to Western expansion and the destiny of the American peoples is very much a sort of monument to a kind of Western European propaganda machine. And as I recall, although I may be incorrect, the design and the implementation of the engineering, of this monument was developed by a Finnish American artist, and maybe the implications of this monument as a propaganda machine would have been more clear if there had been a discourse, surrounding the context of that Western movement, and we've also, been talking about Walt Whitman, and you expressed a lot of enthusiasm for a number of the different readings that I've given, to Whitman, and the way that Whitman's notion of this expansive literary project that keeps growing, and changing, and that very much like the grass that he talks about, in some ways forms almost an organic rhizome. But Whitman, was not immune to the ideological seduction of propaganda machines like the construct of Western expansion, and especially later in life, he cited cited in many ways with these colonialist projects. And as much as, we love Whitman and the way that Whitman works, we have to be critical as well of any, attachment to ideas that fail to recognize their role in the subjugation of human people, or any other kind of people, right? Because Western expansion also entailed a lot of ecological destruction that is probably irreparable. And so anyway, I thought about, this arch, and I thought about the way that Reclamation works. And we also have been talking about Pablo Talk Hall in Oceanside, California, and how a building that was, once used as a school, a mission school, has been reclaimed and named for a Luiseño scholar, Pablo Talk, who invented a way to transcribe the Luiseño language of these people who built this mission and subsequently were subjugated by it. And these people, many of whom, not all of the bands, but many of the bands who still don't have territories of their own and haven't been recognized by the federal government. So I thought about, this monument in relationship to those things that we've been talking about, and context, and immediate context, and historical context, and assumptions behind these monuments, and their toll on human beings, and how they, I guess, belie like the truth at the center of it all. Is it's really a monument to American imperialism and theft, isn't it? Because none of that land that the Western territorialization of the United States took, really belonged to the subjects that are celebrated in this arch. So it's a monument to theft and lies and ideological propaganda. So I thought about a way of rectifying it. And, here where we are at Fort Defiance, we're not far from Window Rock, which has its own kind of arch that's not made out of steel and engineering, but it's a natural formation of stone. And of course, there's another famous one in Utah called the Rainbow Bridge. And the reason that it's called the Rainbow Bridge is because, rainbows are important in Native American culture as signs of healing, and because of the association with rain as, images of life. And in Navajo culture, you have Yi, or spirits that are forms of rain. So here's one. This is Rain Boy. This is the modern version of sand painting, which is done for sale rather than done for medicine in the sand. Although the medicine paintings are still created, but this one's created. This one's actually glued to a canvas instead of being temporary, and represents this figure, this Yi, called Rain Boy. So in Navajo culture, the way that a rainbow is drawn is the outer, this is the rainbow itself right here, and the outer edge is red, and then the inner edge is blue. Now, there's some variations in the modern version of it, and in the traditional version of it, the red would be this kind of earth clay red, and the blue would be this kind of sky blue or turquoise blue. And And not only is the rainbow a yay, but the rainbow is also used as a protective framework for sand paintings in general. Okay, so here's the rainbow here. You can see the outer edge is red and the inner edge is blue. And it surrounds the figures in the sand painting and acts as a protective sacred space. So these figures are protected by the rainbow. And here are some figures, and here's the rainbow. Here's Rainbow Boy's feet, and you see it goes down and then around the top, and then there's Rainbow Boy's face. Okay, so this is a protective rainbow, and then you see at the top there are a few other designations for each one of the spirits is also surrounded by these protectors. All right, now the open space at the top is there so that spirits can travel, you know, in and out, and they're not enclosed, though they're protected. So that's another function. And here's another example. This is a more modern example where you see some variations going on. So like traditionally you would have the outer edge here would be red, and then you see the colors are reversed here, right? And then there's a line in the center that's also not really part of the tradition, although there can be a thin white line in the traditional depictions, but this white line in the center that's given as much weight as the colored elements of the rainbow is that's a new way of doing things. And it seems to me that this representation pays homage to the United States flag. And one of the reasons why it may do that is because of the role that the military plays in the lives of many Navajo people who who are veterans and who belong to a tradition of having family members in military service, and how that has become extremely important, especially since the Navajo participation in World War II and the Navajo code talkers' role in the defeat of fascism at that time. All right, so and let me close a couple of these windows to talk about a project proposal for this bridge. It's not just Navajo culture that rainbows are important in terms of American native traditions. Here's just this is no way comprehensive, but just a list of a few stories about rainbows and what they mean in various Native American cultures. And then, of course, I'm very fond of Jimi Hendrix, and Jimi Hendrix also makes reference to the Rainbow Bridge and what that Rainbow Bridge and what that Rainbow Serpent, means. So my proposal for recontextualizing this art, and you'll recall we're talking about contexts of communication and how contexts are important in the framing of understanding and imagery and acts of communication. My proposal for reframing this image is to reframe it as a rainbow. And it could be done in a Navajo way, where we paint the outer edge red and the inner edge blue, but and that would be an act of reclamation of the arch. But I think it's also tempting, since this is such a modern work, to perhaps reconstruct it and reclaim it in a modern or even postmodernist way. And I had thought about, Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition, and I had thought about what the rainbow means, for those struggling in communities in which difference in many ways, difference in understanding one's gender and sexuality, or understanding one's politics, or understanding one's ethnic identity, or understanding one's identity outside of an ableist construct, can all be represented by this image of the rainbow. And I had thought about also those designs that use rainbows to talk about ways of adding numbers together, and how that plays into our set theory, and how our use of set theory talks about inclusion in these multiple ways. So I thought, maybe one way of reclaiming this particular ideological project would be to place large scale neon lighting in the actual arrangement of the light in the rainbow, and then this rainbow could be lit at night, and in the day, perhaps behind the neon, it would be also painted in the colors of the rainbow, so the rainbow would never go out. And then that reminded me of that Ronnie James Dio song. He may not be the best spokesperson for our project Reclamation, but there's a song, right? Like a Rainbow in the Dark. And I don't know that much about Ronnie James Dio's political interests or ideology, but I like the idea of this rainbow. This huge rainbow in St. Louis, whose light never goes out, and that somehow speaks to this moment in 1969 or near Woodstock. A song called Somebody to Love.